Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's ELGL webinar about online local government forms and payments. I'm ELGL Executive Director Kirsten Wyatt, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's presentation. ELGL is a Big Tent local government organization. We work to connect, communicate, and educate our members on a variety of local government topics, and today is no exception as we learn from Kevin Herman with ProudCity and Matt Gallowitz and Eric Lasker with Stripe. Before we begin, I want to let you know that your microphones and conference phones are muted, and this makes the webinar enjoyable and efficient for everyone. During the presentation and after it is finished, we can open up for questions, and you can submit these using the chat box on the left side of your screen. I will moderate and ask these questions as they come in, so the recording of the webinar also includes the questions to our guests. We are live tweeting today's webinar, and you can follow along with the hashtag ELGLTech, and be sure to use the Twitter handles for today's participants, @GetProudCity and @Stripe. But before we get started, I have two lightning round questions for each of our presenters. And so, Kevin, we'll start with you. What is the first website you check when you wake up in the morning?
First website I check after hitting snooze a couple times is that I'm staring down my fantasy baseball accomplishments from the previous night.
Nice. Matt, what about you?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mine is typically New York Times. I know it sounds kind of boring, but it's definitely the one that's preloaded to first thing when I wake up. Eric?
Yeah, so it's not really a website, but the first thing that kind of pops up in my inbox every day is Political Playbook. So the various sources that kind of come through Playbook are good for me.
All right, and our next question, Eric, we'll start with you on this one. What is your most controversial non-political opinion?
My most controversial non-political opinion? Probably my love of the Star Wars prequels. I know that episodes 1, 2, and 3 not that popular. I kind of think they're okay.
All right. And Matt, what about you?
My most controversial non-political. I think cottage cheese is disgusting.
Oh no,
that's horrible. I don't really like cottage cheese, but I just think it's the grossest thing ever.
I put ketchup on my cottage cheese. How do you feel about that? All right, and Kevin, what's your most controversial non-political opinion?
I'll stick with the theme of food. I don't think it's all that controversial, but if your bagel is fresh, you cannot toast it.
All right. So Kevin, Matt, Eric, welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to learn from you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to get us started.
Hi, everyone. We're really excited for the webinar today. As Kirsten mentioned, if you are want to engage with us, here are our different accounts. On the webinar, we have Kirsten Wyatt, myself with ProudCity, Matt and Eric with Stripe. I'm a co-founder of ProudCity. ProudCity is a digital government platform and software as a service company that provides a range of government solutions, including secure, accessible, mobile-friendly websites, online forms, and payments, and onboarding services. I would like to pass off to Matt and Eric briefly just for a quick introduction to themselves and Stripe.
Hey, my name is Eric Lasker. I've been at Stripe now for just about 5 years. I've worked in a number of different roles over here, but these days lead up our enterprise public sector partnerships team.
Hi, my name is Matt Gallowitz. I help lead up our public sector business at Stripe, and been at Stripe for about 3 years now. Before that was at Google for almost a decade, working on public policy, government affairs, as well as their business team. So excited about the future of government payments and excited to be working with ProudCity on this.
Great, thanks guys. So just to get beyond the company plugs here, the big goal of this webinar today is to help educate and help demystify modern forms and payments for local government. to get that kicked off, we believe that forms focus on being mobile friendly. They need to be accessible. They need to be secure, and they must be user friendly. We think that it needs to be user friendly for both your community and for your staff administering it. So these are kind of the 4 tenets that we focus on with our forms. I don't think it should come with any surprise that online transactions are becoming more and more preferred. So when citizens or people in your community have been polled with how they would like to transact business with government, it's overwhelmingly that it wants to be online. Now, at the core of these online transactions and services are forms. So there are lots of different use cases, payments, so ticketing, fines, permits, contact forms, issue reporting, public record requests, subscriptions, and many, many more. And making up these different types of transactions, the core of the form, just fields. So collecting information, collecting requests, so that you can provide those services. Other key components are confirmations. The user needs to know that they have successfully entered those fields. Additionally, notifications. The right parties need to know that the services or information has been requested. Additionally, there's been a lot of talk, and rightfully so, with these components is around accessibility. There's a couple different aspects to this. Some are best practices that rely on content. So providing clear and predictable and logical forms that can be done with descriptions, making it very obvious that someone is filling out a business license application form. Keeping it simple is also a helpful tool in making it clear what people are filling out and working on. But there are also aspects that you need to make sure is available in your technology. Some of these are ensuring that there's keyboard accessibility. So if someone hits tab, that it goes down to the next field. Also that the form builder that you're using to create these forms are creating proper labels so that if someone is using a screen reader, that the information that it strips away is still providing clear and logical requests for the information that you would like them to fill out. So a combination of content best practices and also technology requirements come together in accessibility. The other aspect that is really important on the technology side is security. We have a huge emphasis on HTTPS, so making sure that all pages are SSL certified and encrypted. This has become even more important this month, actually, with Google rewarding sites in their search results for being secure. But when you're collecting information and when you're collecting payments, especially, having secure forms is critical. The other aspect of this is PCI compliance. I think this is a good time to pass off to the folks at Stripe, since this is very much about the financial transaction.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin. And I think PCI compliance is a great area to start with because it's obviously something that needs to be front of mind. PCI compliance are the card network rules regarding handling sensitive cardholder data. And increasingly, I think local municipal governments that Stripe works with don't want to be having to follow all the most stringent requirements under PCI. And in that regard, being able to use partners like ProudCity and Stripe to handle a lot of the burden with regards to PCI compliance is a huge benefit of working with more modern payments technologies. You can streamline and make their payment solutions more efficient.
Yeah, and I feel like there are a lot of folks out there that'll say you just won't have to in any way touch PCI. But the fact is that the way that the rules are written is that if you transact at all online, you are kind of in the bounds of PCI. So really the way to think about this is to minimize your PCI burden as much as possible. And so that's a lot of the work that Stripe does over here. Particularly, we even had a new release yesterday for some UI components, some user interface components that really bring that to an absolute minimum, from something that used to take months and months and months to something that now Stripe actually pre-fills out and puts that right in your account. So through really this working with good partners like Stripe and ProudCity, you can really minimize this and just kind of keep your security up to scuff without too much work on your side.
Great. If we could jump to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about payments now. And I think we want to give a little bit of background on who Stripe is and who we are as a company. And I think we can't do that without describing first how internet commerce has grown considerably in the last 20 years. And in 1995, which is when many of the online payment systems that municipal and city governments use today were built, there was only 1 billion in online sales. We've now reached a stage in 2017 where we're seeing 1.5 trillion in online sales. So internet commerce has grown 1,500 times in 20 years. And I don't think anyone could have imagined that so many people would be using the web for so many things, whether it's paying parking tickets, paying taxes online, paying a fee or a permit. That's just in the government space, but there's just tons of use cases for the web. And nowadays, most citizens and consumers expect to be able to interact with their local city governments online and to pay for things online. But the tools that people are using to interact with their users online are dating from the 1990s. It's like using a cell phone from the 1990s. No one's doing that anymore. And with payments, you shouldn't be using technology from the 1990s either.
Yeah, and the really kind of wild part about this chart is that you get that nice hockey stick going on with how many transactions are currently transacted online and the amount of volume. But keep in mind that this actually still only represents right around 5% of total credit card spending or even payment spending. So while this is increasing very, very rapidly, we could probably put the same chart down 5 years from now and it's going to look just about the same. This number is only increasing. So really when you're looking with how people are interacting today, it's clearly moving online, it's clearly moving mobile. So you just want to set yourself up with the best tools possible. And that's really where Stripe and folks like ProudCity come in. Next slide.
So in many ways, the systems and tools that folks are using were based on offline payment methods. So the terminals that everyone's familiar with from in-person payments with credit cards, oftentimes those were reverse engineered to create online payment forms. Stripe and ProudCity are different in they're leading with digital first technologies that, assuming that people aren't going to be in person, they're going to be online first. They're building with a digital and online first mindset so that it has the best user interfaces, the best flows for payments, as opposed to trying to reverse engineer technology that was built 20 years ago. And the next slide. You can see a little bit of information. These are the types of payment integration guides that used to be standard when you were integrating online payments. And oftentimes many legacy providers still require this 500-page PDF guide to integrate online payments, which is almost prohibitive for your developers at a small city or local municipality to do. And that's part of the reason why Stripe's made our tools and services so developer friendly and easy to integrate.
Yep. And I would just say on this one, I mean, if you kind of think about that, you're going to build your website, you're fully online, you're using AWS, you're using a lot of these very online centric tools. And then in the past, you would actually get sent this PDF that was like 450, 500 pages, depending on which provider. And that's just completely backwards, right? And so there was almost an inevitability when it comes to a system like Stripe to actually approach this problem with a digital first mindset. Now we just put our documentation right online so your developers can get right into it, integrate this as quickly as possible, and really just give your users that really, really great experience that honestly they come to expect from a lot of those other payment experiences that they're going to have online, whether that's from Lyft or Amazon or there are even a lot of government agencies that are kind of bulking that up. So we provide this toolkit. ProudCity provides this toolkit to really just make sure that you really fall into this digital first mindset.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like to Eric's point, consumers expect an experience like what Amazon provides, and if an online retail experience doesn't live up to that standards, they're not going to purchase. So why can't government websites provide the same level of usability and ease of use that most e-commerce sites provide today?
Yep. Next slide.
So Stripe, in conjunction with ProudCity, are really working on three fronts with the technology we've developed. First, we're empowering developers, whether you're using a third-party dev shop or in-house development and technology teams at your government office. By empowering developers to build more quickly and effectively, it's really transforming the game with regards to payments online.
And honestly, just keeping your costs lower, right? You're not having to have a developer sit for 3-4 days trying to understand that integration guide. We actually just provide that online, make it really easy to use. And certainly kind of the other two theses that come out of using Stripe are making sure that you can move quickly so that as the world of payments starts to expand, that you really have a partner that you can rely on to expand with you. So you're not having to look for that new partner when, say, Apple releases their new version of Apple Pay, or the Google event is going on right now, and they're probably going to be releasing a new version of Android Pay or some of these other ones. You don't want to have to kind of need to keep up to the industry. Stripe and partners can do that for you.
And that also ties to, let's say you're setting up a new payments page. City Council passes a new tax. You have to collect some type of new revenue. It shouldn't take 3 to 4 weeks for a payment partner to launch a new website. You should be able to do that in minutes.
Yep. Next slide.
And the last one is collecting revenue more efficiently.
Yep. Yep. And so, this is really where Stripe sits, particularly on the empower developer front. If you kind of look at some of those items that we have listed over on the right side, in the past, those used to be honestly relationships that you would have to go and get involved with in order to get up and running with payments. Kind of depending on the complexity, you'll have all of those or you'll have just a few of those. But in many ways, those are individual integrations with individual API guides, with individual kind of customer service teams and pieces that you're having to tie together. And so the real promise with Stripe, and the reason that we've seen such dramatic growth recently in really all sectors that we're in, is just that we simplify this. We really say, what do developers actually want to utilize or build with when they're actually going through and looking to integrate with the system? And so you'll actually notice that we're pretty unashamed about putting code all over our website, because that's the way that we orient our company towards the folks that are actually building this into the payment pages themselves. Next slide.
So I'm going to pass it back to the ProudCity team here, who are going to do a quick demo of how they've integrated Stripe into some of their payment pages.
Great, thank Matt and Eric. So it is incredibly helpful being able to leverage the technology that Stripe has put together. It allows us to focus on our core business, which, to their point, allows us to provide payment forms and forms in general to cities that they can create quickly and easily. So what I'd like to do now is just show you how you would just create a quick payment form so that you can see that with ProudCity and with Stripe, we can move quickly when you have those new revenue streams created by City Council, or you simply just want to create a form that you didn't have before. So by being logged into our site, we can hop into our dashboard and jump into our forms. And I'm just going to do a quick example of showing a court payment. So I have it set up. We're going to go in and edit it, as I was mentioning before, with having ADA in mind with best practices as far as your content strategy, just being very clear with your title that you want someone to be paying a court payment, and that we have some general fields set up here. Form builders have come an extremely long way over the years, and I absolutely love how this one works. It's just really simple in that we utilize drag and drop with these different fields. So instead of needing to have a single line of text and starting from scratch where it's untitled. If you want to put in a phone number or something that is pretty standard, like name that we have here, we're just dragging it over to create that item on the page. If we want to go in and edit it and have it be a required field, that's not a problem. And so you're really just dragging and moving page or form elements as you want it to be on the page. I talked about labels earlier. So if we're dragging phone over and we want the label to clearly describe what we're asking for people that are using screen readers, this descriptive area that's already baked into these fields automatically do that for you. If this needs to be a mobile phone, you could just type it in, and our technology is making that consistent throughout the form for the end user. Now, what's pretty exciting about, and I'll just remove this, is that we're just in a standard web form here that I'm creating. If we want to turn this into a payment form, just like everything else, we're dragging over credit card. And now we can accept that information. I'm just going to update the form so that sticks. And we'll go through the process of posting it to the front end. But as Matt and Eric were saying earlier, with us being able to lean on Stripe for keeping things like PCI compliance and updates and standards on the transaction end, which are incredibly important, we're able to have really easy and nice tools like this that allow you on the government side to easily provide these solutions to your communities. So now that this is updated, we have these fields. We could also set the confirmation messages and notifications to your internal team that I discussed earlier. But we're going to hop into the ability to publish this payment. So if I then go into this court payment here, again, nice clear title. If someone does want to pay by check, they have the information here. And then I'm selecting the form for the court payment. Once I update and I view the site, I can go into this payment sections on this demo, and we have our court payment right here on the home page that we only took minutes to put together. These options also, the other aspect of ADA for being keyboard accessible is that the tab clearly goes down from field to field, so check that that's enabled and working. We also have the ability by going into the dashboard to get a preview on how this would work on mobile so that people can then make mobile transactions with your community by clicking on the court payment and paying on their phone, or even by going through Facebook through our Service Center app. You can make your payments directly through our Facebook page application. The last aspect that I just want to show quickly is the ability to manage all this. Just transactions don't stop with the resident putting in their credit card information. There's also a large compliance side. And again, relying on the tools that we're able to use from Stripe, we have a very easy payment dashboard where you can clearly see where payments are coming from, if they're successful, if you need to look at a detail to refund it. and if you have subscriptions for recurring payments for, say, a parking pass, you can set up those sort of views as well. What's also nice is if your finance department is keen on spreadsheets, you have an easy export on any page or any detail where you can have a print view or save to a spreadsheet to see those transaction details. And this is built right into our dashboard so that everything is easily tracked when you're logged in. So that brings us to sort of the end of the demo component. For the folks who are downloading this presentation or viewing on their own time, we have some of the features that go into our forms that we're able to connect to and utilize our integration with Stripe. And if anyone wants to follow up and contact us or get more information, here are our details. But at this time, I would love to pass back to Kirsten to open up to questions.
Great, and thank you for sharing that information with us. And at this point, I want to remind people that we do take questions using that attendee chat bar over on the left-hand side. But I'm going to start with a kind of case study hypothetical and ask how, if someone's listening to this and they recognize the need, based on the data that's available and also just understanding their community, that online payments are critically important, but they're having a hard time convincing people in their organization that this is a safe and secure way to accept transactions. Walk us through how they could best convince someone who's more skeptical that this is a safe, secure, and important way for local government to evolve.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in there. And I think the big thing to emphasize is what's not safe or secure is the way they're doing it now. What's not safe or secure is using systems that are built decades ago for online payments. What's not safe or secure are many card-present solutions where card numbers can be easily lifted from in-person terminals. The easiest, safest, and most secure way to accept transactions online are using modern payment providers like Stripe and the companies like ProudCity that have built tools on top of Stripe. That is unquestionably the safest way to get card details, providing the least amount of risk to consumers and providing the most, I think, guarantees on security and safety to higher ups within an organization. So it's more of the question of what's the risk of not acting.
Yep. No, and I would just back that up too, right? Like certainly a decade, 15 years ago, when online transactions were really just coming out for the first time, you can kind of imagine that there's going to be some little quirks that go along with the system, but you saw that chart that we showed for the first time. There just wouldn't be that many online transactions if this wasn't a really safe way to do it. And in particular, PCI at this point, while there are certainly frustrating aspects to it, it is a very solid security standard. And so if your system is up to scuff with PCI in mind, then you should feel very confident that the transactions are going to be secure.
So Jolene has a question. She asks, our county is in the process of updating their website for a complete redesign, and they are currently developing their RFP. What would you recommend as language to include in their RFP to include online payments, forms, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Kevin from ProudCity. First of all, I think it's great that you're seeing that as a key feature and requirement for something that you want to include. On the forms side, I would recommend having enough flexibility that it's something that you can create and manage on your own. For the purpose of you're creating these requirements in your RFP today, but the technology and the requirements that you might need tomorrow or in 2 years could be different. So by having something that you can manage on your own and not be completely reliant on whoever you're hiring to do the job, that you're thinking about your long-term success, and that your features give you the tools and the training to manage it on your own. And I would say the same goes on the payments side. You want to be set up from day one, but you also want to be set up for long-term success. So again, having the management tools that allow you to own the features and the management of it will go a long way. Things to consider, just a checklist with ADA compliance and PCI compliance and mobile friendly are all pretty standard at this point. I'd imagine at the county level that anyone that you would consider working with would consider those standard.
We have a great question here from Ariane about, have the counties you've worked with experienced any statutory limitations in initiating online payments?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Or have any counties that you've worked with experienced any statutory limitations in initiating online payments?
We haven't. It seems like the folks in all our municipalities who are ready to move forward with payments realize that, especially the cities that are working with a software as a service company, realize that some of the some older laws or rules might not apply apples to apples to modern technology. So if there are any sort of roadblocks, we're able to talk with city attorneys or the communities on what they feel might be holding them back and how we can provide the modern service.
And along those lines, a follow-up that I have, do you provide updated financial policy language, for example, that cities could put into their own policies to reflect the new technology that you're implementing?
We don't provide it directly, but part of being a platform is that we have communities around the country that understand the benefits of being part of a platform. So if there are different communities that are looking to solve a problem about policy language, we have a handful of cities that have dealt with that in different ways, and we can connect them to help solve that problem. So we're not in the business of writing that language ourselves, but we are in the business of creating a community of governments that can help each other.
And here at ELGL, we love building communities and networks of people. So that's a great answer. So another question about counties, besides Marin County, California, and the comment is the site looks awesome. What other counties have you worked with to implement online payments?
Well, be upfront. We're a small company, so we're just getting started with a handful of counties. So we don't have county examples as of yet. But as far as payments go, we use the same technology and strategy for providing that service. So if you want to email me directly, I could share those examples with you that way. And a lot of it is kind of language based. So getting into what we're talking about with ADA compliance and having very clear language on what people are filling out. Oftentimes that's a difference between a county payment and a state, federal, or whatever, whichever municipality the service is going through.
And I would say on the Stripe side, we've seen dozens of government government organizations on the county, state, even federal government started to use more modern payment solutions like Stripe. And as more and more of those government entities begin to use modern payment solutions, that leads to, I think, more of a network effect where people feel more comfortable moving in this direction. But no one, I think, wants to be the first adopter. So it's good that we've seen a lot of adoption already on our platform, at least.
This is a great question. Many states, through maybe a state agency, have kind of a pooled online service option, whether it's for records or online payments. And so Jolene is asking, how are your online payment systems different or better than many of the state treasurer's office eGov pay systems that county offices use? So why should a city opt to go kind of the independent route versus, working through maybe a state-run system?
Sure. Well, I know on our platform, we allow you to accept, so you can accept payments through the dashboard that we showed where you have control and you can create the forms and for all the different services you want directly through our platform. We also recognize that there are certain things, especially if you're a city that perhaps the county handles and it's not part of your office, that you need to direct people there. So we provide an option to link out to those services. As far as leaning on the technology itself for all of your options, I'm going to go back to what I suggested for the RFP question, in that if you need to react quickly, or if you just want to create a new form, if you're relying on another office, you might have some challenges in getting that done in a timely fashion. By having something that you control, the opportunities are really endless. So if you come up with an opportunity or a new campaign or a new outreach program, you're thinking about how you could execute it, not about who you could call to ask if you can execute it. So I think being empowered to do it on your own is a very, very big deal.
All right, so we have a tough one here from Destin. If a municipality is using paper forms and accepting payment via checks, how would they integrate an online version so it doesn't make it double work for a municipal employee? In other words, some town residents will use offline payments and others might use the online version. What is a good way for a municipal clerk or treasurer to keep track of two different systems?
Sorry, you broke out for a second. It looks like my connection my bandwidth might be not the best at the moment. So I just want to repeat the question, make sure I got it. So if you have a paper trail system and a digital system, how do you make sure that everything's playing nicely? Is that correct?
It's that, and just making sure that you're not doubling up work by having an online system that requires one level of attention and then an offline system that requires another level of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So to what Matt and Eric were saying before, I think we need to be honest with the direction that we're heading in where the majority of transactions are taking place. So there could realistically be a transition period where you do have paper and you do have digital. I think that the benefits of digital, with being able to track and download forms and have a paper trail very clearly, is a big part of why things are trending that way on the compliance side. I do think that there will be some challenges depending on what your internal systems are on collecting that paper trail. We try and be flexible with the dashboard that I showed you, that we offer a nice looking interface that you could interact with to have that information. But that's also a big part of why we allow for downloads of various different types of reports, because we know that finance teams are managing lots of different legacy systems. So we try and create a way that you could bring things over and have things start moving towards a more modern approach. But in that process, we want to be flexible enough so that when you are dealing with your paper trail on the physical side, that you can download the reports that you need to try and reconcile as cleanly as possible.
I think the key thing to emphasize as well is the direction things are going, where more and more is happening online. And the reason why that's important is because I think we should be working backwards and solving for the paper checks issue second nowadays, because even like everyone in my family from like age 10 to 90 are all using cell phones. I think everyone is familiar with online, and people may still want to use paper checks, but the great thing about modern technology is that it seems to be easily adaptable and usable by all segments of society, and that speaks to government as well.
Well, I think there could be amazing opportunities as well, as simple as installing a kiosk in your, on your front counter. And even if someone comes in and wants to pay with a check or fill out a form, using that as almost like a teachable moment, this is the way that we're doing things. And if the customer still doesn't want to, you obviously have a payment or a process in place, but, it could be an opportunity as well to, help your community move toward an online payment, and being able to explain as well, the cost savings and the efficiency that could potentially yield in not having to have as many people processing paper versus, pushing someone to the online system. So another question, what are some of the biggest government forms and payments myths that you'd want to debunk for this audience today?
That it takes a lot of time. As we showed you today, at least for us, and we lean on Stripe for a big part of this, is that you don't have to go to the bank and negotiate terms and have an account with them and set up different types of payment gateways. You can sign up for a Stripe account directly through our dashboard, which could get you up and running and creating these forms on your own within minutes. So the fact that we actually can execute accepting transactions that quickly, I think is extremely helpful, just to know that you can do that. I realize that there are obligations to make these decisions, but as far as executing, it can be very quick.
Another great question from Ariane about incorporating your platform with legacy financial software in cities or counties. Did you have major issues? Did you have to develop a bridge to integrate payment information within an existing financial system and the online system?
No, I think because of the exporting that we have, and that we are exporting files in a very clean and clear way, that finance departments have been very comfortable with working in the legacy systems. I think the offices that are married to these systems have been wrestling with them for a long time, and if they have to stick with them, they generally know how to make it work, for better or for worse. So we haven't had issues in how to figure out that workflow on our side. It's more about them trying to figure out how they can move away from that when that legacy contract is over.
I would emphasize the same thing from Stripe's end, just that our API is easy to export information from, so that it can be adapted into a multitude of different types of systems, and that's part of what ProudCity is taking advantage of.
All right, I'll give it another minute or two to see if we have any last questions coming in from our audience. And again, I'll remind you that we are going to share this full presentation on elgl.org in our webinar library. We download the full presentation to YouTube, and so you can share it with your staff and your colleagues as well. We know that not everyone can make a predetermined time for a webinar, and so we want to make sure that you have this information on demand when you need it or when your staff needs it as well. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to just ask you to join me and give a huge thanks to Kevin, Matt, and Eric for today's presentation. And I want to thank all of our audience members for participating and sharing your time with ELGL. Later today, we will put a Twitter transcript of our hashtag ELGLTech up on elgl.org for you to look at, and we'll also get that video posted soon. And so with that, I'm going to end today's webinar, and I want to thank all of you for your support of Proud City, of Stripe, and of ELGL. I see one last question coming in, and I'll just throw it out there. If people have to hop off, that's fine too. But the last question of the day, do you have any suggestions for a point of sale mechanism to accept payments at the counter?
That's something that we're currently working on. I know, I believe Stripe has a solution. Something that we've been working on, which Kirsten kind of mentioned unknowing, is the kiosk option. So because our solution can be turned into an app, you could set up a physical kiosk in your town halls or city halls. So you can have a physical point of sale with the additional information from our service center. So that's an option that we're working on.
All right, and Kevin and Matt's contact information is on the screen. We'll also include that in our summary post on ELGL, and we'll get that out to everyone who attended as well, and a direct email back to you. So again, thanks to everyone for participating. Thanks to Stripe and Proud City for sharing this great information with us, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks for scheduling this. Appreciate it. Great to meet everyone.
Thanks, everyone.